And now, live from Smoke on the Water in Greenville's West End, here is Straight Up with Sturge with Mark Sturgis.
Welcome back in, 7:25 on this Tuesday night edition of Straight Up with Sturge, coming to you live from Smoke on the Water here in Greenville's historic West End District. Off to the guest line we go. Eric Prisbell, the national college basketball writer for USA Today, joins us. Eric, hope we're having a good night. You keep them warm?
Oh, no problem. Yeah, it's pretty good here. I'm in Dallas tonight.
Oh, then you're no problem. Yeah, we had sunshine today. I feel like sometimes with these basketball guys, they all congregate north of the Mason-Dixon line, so I just try to ask them if they're staying warm in January. But, Eric, we are the flagship station of Clemson Athletics. Let's start this little journey through the next segment with, what do you make of Clemson's situation right now? 11-4 overall, 2-1 in the ACC. Coming off, I don't know, you can't label this a signature win over Duke, but anytime that Clemson beats Duke in basketball, it's a big win. What do you make of this Clemson program right now?
I'll tell you what, I actually do call it the signature victory because right, anytime you do beat Duke, it gets people's attention nationwide and it gets the spotlight back on your program. I think that's been one of the issues with Clemson the last couple of years, just national relevance. And Duke is not the typical Duke team. We know that. But I think they're going to get things turned around, and that win is going to still look very, very good by the end of the season. Now the thing is, can they continue to play well? Can they find consistency in the ACC, which is a very unpredictable conference, as you know, and it's really topsy-turvy when you get it away from Syracuse and Pittsburgh at the top. I mean, there's a lot of teams that have disappointed. So there are opportunities there. I think Clemson plays great defense. I mean, they're eighth in the country defense efficiency. KJ McDaniels has been really good. Look, I think their record is a little deceiving, though, overall. They played the country's 206th best schedule. So straight the schedule is not quite there. RPI is not great. 110. Lost to Auburn's not good. But I think they're going to surprise people in that league. I really do.
Eric, Price Atkinson sitting in with Mark tonight. You know, a follow-up just real quick to Clemson. You know, it's still way too early to kind of start looking ahead about what you need to do to make the NCAA tournament, but you kind of laid out some of the challenges, you know, that the committee obviously would face with RPI shrinking the schedule. You know, I'm kind of looking at it right now that Clemson needs to at least really hit that 500 mark in conference. But in addition to that, I was kind of curious what your thoughts are nationally looking at the college basketball landscape. You know, Brad Brownell going into the season, did you see him as a little bit on the hot seat or really kind of needing to put a nice run together this year, you know, to, I don't want to say hold on to his job, but have you heard any kind of rumblings there at all with him too?
Not serious rumblings. I mean, certainly there's pressures everywhere, but I would say that Brad was under some pressure this season to perform well and show some improvement. I think the Duke victory is a step in the right direction, but he's got to follow up on it. But I will say that there are a number of coaches around the country who are on a seat far more hot than Brad is right now, and they're far more at risk of being fired and losing their job than Brad is. That's my view. When I look at programs, I always say, what is a realistic expectation for the program, and how is that program progressing toward achieving that? And at Clemson, I think every year that they should be in the mix for the NCAA tournament, and every couple of years have a chance to advance and maybe reach the Sweet 16. I think that highly of the program, and they got to move in the right direction now. I mean, the time is now for them to do it, I believe. And you know, they don't have any seniors on the team. They're a young team, and I think they're going to surprise some people in the ACC this year. But I don't think they're going to do enough to reach the NCAA tournament.
We're talking with Eric Prisbell, the national basketball writer for USA Today, usatoday.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric Prisbell. Eric, you know, what are your early season thoughts? What's caught your attention? Anything that's been a major surprise or disappointment? And then further that with, would you consider the ACC to date as a disappointment? I know it's hard with Syracuse and Pitt, you know, both playing so well, but outside of that, I would think this might be a league right now where we would be normally talking 3, maybe 4 bids to the NCAA tournament come March.
The ACC right now is the biggest disappointment in the country when you're talking about conferences because of the heightened expectations that the league had entering this season. People were talking about this league potentially being one of the best in history. And not only has it not been that, but it's rated fifth right now in the RPI. And if it did not have newcomers like Pittsburgh and Syracuse, as you mentioned, it would be behind the SEC. It's very mediocre when you get down to it. It doesn't have the depth of a lot of the better leagues. So many of the teams have really been disappointments, from Notre Dame's inconsistencies to Duke. Maryland has been a major disappointment. And I think the team that sums it all up is North Carolina, still sitting there with no victories in the ACC. And like I said, it presents opportunities for other teams. Clemson is one of them.
Eric, I wanted to look at a couple of the teams, that feature some of the top freshmen in the country. Specifically Jabari Parker at Duke, Julius Randle at Kentucky, and then Andrew Wiggins at Kansas. All three of those teams have had some hiccups early in this season. Duke obviously is struggling a little bit more than Kentucky and Kansas to this point. Kansas and Kentucky are starting to put it together a little bit more, but you look at those three teams, Kentucky, Duke, and Kansas, really led by young players, young stars. I mean, Duke might have a little bit more seasoning as far as experience of those three teams, but, what do you think? Do you think that's just part of the learning curve as some of these teams trying to adapt and gel with such young players? And is there any reason for, Calipari and Coach Self at Kansas to be worried right now? Is it just way too early in conference play in early January?
I think Duke's a little bit different because they do have more experience. I believe Jabari Parker has definitely hit a freshman wall right now, and we'll see if he rebounds from that. But Bill Self and John Calipari, I think, are conducting the same on-the-job coaching experiments at their respective schools with their players, because they're loaded with talented, super talented freshmen. And Andrew Wiggins and Joel Embiid are going to be top 5 picks. Kentucky has 6 McDonald's All-Americans. And the question throughout, and I think it's the most intriguing storyline in the country, is how quickly all of that potential will translate to performance on the court. Will it happen by March? If it does, one of those two teams can win a national championship. But it's a race to see if that could happen. And I think both of them are getting it going. It's going to be interesting to see what Kentucky does tonight against Arkansas. But I've been really impressed with what Kansas has done of late. I've been around them a lot. I'm going to go to the Oklahoma State game on Saturday, and they're going to be extremely dangerous. And I think people take for granted how difficult it is to coach freshmen, because I think the 2012 Kentucky team spoiled everybody. They weren't just super talented, but they had a selfless nature to them. They were unselfish. They were team-first players. We didn't care about statistics. And until that happens with this current group at Kentucky and at Kansas, then they're going to be held back.
Yeah. Well, with conference play really in high gear now as of this week, it got underway last week in a lot of conferences, but really now getting fully going. What are some of the, leagues that you see around the country, especially the power conferences, that really you think ultimately are going to have the best, the tightest race at the top for the conference championships?
I'd start with the Big 12, which is the number one rated conference in the RPI. And people in the Big 12 told me that it could be their best league in about a decade. It's just so darn deep. I mean, it's not just that the fact that the top 4 teams are rated in the top 16 of the RPI, but it goes deeper than that. Oklahoma is a competitive tournament team. Kansas State could upset people. Texas has really overachieved. And the bottom of the Big 12 is not as bad as the bottom of other leagues. And you have Kansas shooting for a share of a 10th straight Big 12 title. It's a really compelling storyline, and it's going to be extremely competitive. Now, the AAC, I'm really intrigued with, because Louisville's coming back to the pack, and they're vulnerable. Memphis, with 4 senior guards, is very dangerous. UConn is dangerous on occasion, but they've had a couple losses that have confused me. And I think Cincinnati could sneak up and win that league. I really do. I think that's going to be very competitive. The Big Ten, obviously, you could have 2 number 1 seeds coming out of the Big Ten, and certainly Wisconsin and Michigan State are in position to challenge for that. So the battle at the top of that league just will be a brutal competition, and they only play one time. They play Madison, Michigan State at Wisconsin. That will be a huge game.
We're talking with Eric Prisbell, national basketball writer for USA Today, usatoday.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric Prisbell. And as we close up tonight, Eric, you know, the flip side of that is one of the best storylines in college basketball the last 3 or 4 years has been the mid-majors and who may make that run to the Final Four. What's caught your attention at the mid-major level? And then also, can Wichita State, can they make this run after overcoming Southeast Missouri State on the road, being down 18 the other night? At what point do you just want to go ahead and take that loss and not have to worry about that black cloud hanging over your head?
That's a good point, because it would relieve a lot of pressure, and they may be better off losing a game before the NCAA tournament. I really believe that. But I think they're very good, and I've been saying for a while, everybody's looking for this year's Wichita State. Who's it going to be? It could be Wichita State. I think they're better than they were last year. I don't think they can get a number 1 seed just because of the lack of the strength of their non-conference schedule and certainly their conference schedule. But I was impressed with that win against Missouri State on the road, down 18, 19 points. To rally in that situation is impressive. Now, overall, I think we may have a sleeper coming out of the A-10 because the competition at the top of that league is fierce. UMass is third in the RPI. George Washington right now is the best team in the entire D.C. area, better than Maryland, better than Georgetown. They have a very good starting 5. VCU has done it before. I think they've slipped a little bit, but they have a big game right now against CW, so we'll see how that plays out. And St. Louis will frustrate opponents game in and game out. You do not want to play that team in the NCAA tournament. So I would not be surprised if a team from the A-10 made a deep run in the NCAA tournament.
Eric, one last question before we let you go. You had a good tweet today, and I'll read it real quick. You mentioned, do you think the national champion will come from this group of 5 teams between Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Kentucky, and Kansas, or would you take the field? I asked that question to you. What do you think? Would you take one of those 5 teams, or would you take the field? And put you on the spot also a little bit more. Right now, as we sit here right now, very early January, do you have an idea of who your Final Four picks might be, and where would you go with a National Player of the Year at this point?
Yeah, I definitely do for all of that. I believe I would take the 5 teams without question. And my Final Four right now is Arizona, the most complete team in the country, and maybe the best Arizona team in their school history. Wisconsin, I have in the Final Four. This is a better Bo Ryan team than he's ever had. They're able to play fast or play slow. Then I got the 2 teams that are freshman dominated, Kansas and Kentucky. And I think they will get it in gear and round into shape by March. And National Player of the Year, for the first 2 months, it was Jabari Parker. But right now, I would say Creighton Doug McDermott gets the award, and it's well-deserved. He's been great for a number of years.
Well, Eric, fantastic the time tonight. Tell our listeners what you're working on, where they can find your work, and enjoy it, because it's hard to believe we're already halfway through January and on the back stretch of the season.
Oh, I know. I mean, we cover college basketball, comprehensive coverage at usatoday.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Eric Prisbell. And thanks so much. I really appreciate it, sir.
All right. Thank
Eric,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Hope you have a
Thanks
great
a lot.
night.
Thanks so much, Eric.
That's Eric Prisbell. Boy, he knows his stuff. When the great Price Atkinson's over here concurring as he's calling off Player of the Year and things of that nature, and you know what? I'll go ahead and say it. I'm pulling for Doug McDermott to win the National Player of the Year award. I know a lot of these freshmen are one and done, and they're on to the NBA. Every once in a while I'd like to see an upperclassman actually win that award, and this year's probably the best chance we're going to have.
Yeah, and the fact that he could be the first 3-time All-American, first-team All-American in Galilei. I'm trying to remember. It's been 25-something years since we've had a first-team All-American 3 years in a row. But I think Galilei, Doug, what he's done at Creighton, you just have fun.
Playing under Dad.
He's playing under Dad, but the fact he wanted to come back and quote, play in the old Big East, so to speak, have a conference tournament at Madison Square Garden.
It was more about lifetime memories than short-term reward of a paycheck, and you don't see that very often in life. But one thing you do see down here, Price, at Smoke on the Water, those are killer specials on a nightly basis. Tonight, you get something different. It's their version of shrimp and grits. It's shrimp and a fried grit cake. So good. The catch of the day is trout. The soup of the day is chicken tortilla, which, by the way, I've already placed a order for Price's cheeseburger soup. That's coming up on a cold day.
Oh,
here.
Can't wait.
Man, that's fantastic. Your drink special. Half-price bottles of wine up to $50. Don't forget, this restaurant was named, speaking of USA Today, as we just had Eric Prisbell, the national basketball writer. They're smart people. They named Smoke on the Water the #1 restaurant here in Greenville. That's USAtoday.com and their travel division. Said when you combine the quality of the food, the service, and best of all, the prices, there was no better place to spend your dining dollar here in the upstate than right here at Smoke on the Water. Don't forget, happy hour Monday through Saturday, 4 to 7 p.m., live music Tuesday through Thursday nights. If the weather's good, outdoor dining outside on the patio where Shoeless Joe Jackson's statue is, or you could do what this party's doing. It's a covered and heated back deck with a big screen TV out there. You got the whole area to yourself. You need a catering job done, look no further. Just call the restaurant 232-9091. They can handle any size job from multiple thousands of people to 15 in your office party. You cannot go wrong. That's Smoke on the Water. Check out the menu at saucytavern.com. We are WCCP Talk Sports 104.9 FM, the flagship station of Clemson Athletics.